Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome aboard. The power sector has become a real pain in Pakistan's economy, and the malaise that it has generated is causing hemorrhage. Some say more than $7 or $8 billion a year, some say more. And obviously all sort of development, electricity is a basic necessity. For all sort of growth we need electricity. It has many components. When we generate it, then we need a transmission system to bring it to the end user, and there we need a distribution system. So all three clubbed together is called the electrical systems, and that need to be managed and they need to be synced together. What is the fault? Why we have not been in a good position to generate enough electricity and run the system properly? And second, if the generation is not good in Pakistan or it's not enough, can we import electricity, and what are the bottlenecks? We have today with us Mr. Salahuddin Rifai, who is retired as a general manager electrical systems in Pakistan. He has 39-40 years hands-on experience on the sector and has many successes to his credit. Mr. Rifai, very warm welcome. What do you say, sir? What is the bottom line?
What you said is right, that it is power system and generation shortfall is creating a problem with the economy. It's true. But I would go a bit behind that. What generation we have is around 90 billion units with the NTDC system, 95 or something, plus some with Karachi Electric, like 15 billion units. What is this doing? This is the electricity which is creating and
that is
annual
annual
kilowatt hour units. So we have to know that that is the one which is also creating and improving the economy, and that's on which what economy is based, industries to activity and so on. And we have to see how this was built. I mean, if you go 55 years back when WAPDA was built by amalgamating different provincial institutions, it was only 118 megawatts installed capacity. And today it is with NTDC system about 16,860 megawatt load has been flowing just last month on one day. Whereas the generating capacity is more than 22,000 in NTDC plus IPPs, and there is another one about 2,500 Karachi Electric. This production of so much of generating capacity, which is a very capital intensive thing, highly capital intensive, this has been done through self-financing of these utilities. This is the main issue, that the country does not have enough resources, the government does not have enough resources, financial resources to put into the electricity development after having met with the education and health and so many other things, the governance itself, law and order and so on, and defense, which are a big drag on the economy. So the money put into this system by the government is not there, and
it has evaporated.
Electricity departments depend on their own monies or foreign loans which they have to pay back, and unfortunately with the high interest rate, the money which comes from outside for development of generation, for transmission and distribution, the activities you rightly pointed out, that money has to be given back by the power sector, different utilities, with 15% compound interest to the government. In fact, the government charges an extra sum on those loans. From outside it comes average 2%, but then they have to cover for the dollar, rupee foreign exchange rate, but they charge much more as re-lending. So that leaves lesser space with power sector, while the power sector has grown in a huge term in these years from the figures you can see through self-financing. But the affordability, the problems of the financing, funding availability, and non-payment by lots of people in Pakistan, and problem of the political
What do you mean non-payment? You are referring to the pilferage or actual non-payment?
Yeah, there are two kinds. You are right to point out. One is pilferage, which varies from 2 to 3% in some of the discos, or maybe 4% to 30% in some other discos. After the power sector being restructured into different discos in different areas, before it was one, now we can talk in terms of discos. The discos in the south, In the north, those are the ones which are having more than
Hemorrhage.
20 to 25% pilferage, number one. Number two, the remaining money when billed, that is also not paid in full, even by the private consumers and even by the government consumers. In the discos like ISCO where we are sitting and some others analogous like Gujranwala, Gapco, Lesco and Fesco, they are very good in payment. The private payment is 99% according to the billing. The losses are very little, and when technical losses plus theft, everything included is around 10 to 12%, you can know that the theft is smaller. It may be there, maybe 2% or 3%. But in other ones, the losses are of the order of 35 to 40% line losses.
Some say the non-availability of electricity is actually not non-availability of generation capacity, it's affordability, because the fuel mix has been bad and you cannot, and that gives rise to the circular debt.
Of course, this is a very big factor that the fuel mix has been bad. The policies which has transcended and which has accelerated towards this fuel mix rather than improving that fuel mix to reduce the cost towards affordability level has not been very good. Like the policy of 94 IPPs and even 2002, they were tilted towards more generation on the furnace oil, which increases the cost, and the furnace oil cost increased in a huge terms. From 94 policy when that was made, the fuel cost increased from 2,500 around rupees per ton to 75,000 rupees per ton few years back, and today it stands around 45,000. It's still about 18 to 20 times. So that means the fuel cost component of the electricity production from furnace oil is still 18% higher than that 94 when it was envisaged, and it may go higher again, the oil prices. So that has increased the cost. So that was dependent on the policy. It was not folly of the consumer. But theft becomes more because the cost is higher and many people cannot afford it.
So if we correct situation inside Pakistan, we can improve the situation for at least some of the years, for a couple of years or 2-3 years.
To quite an extent. There are steps possible. For example, we start improving the fuel mix. The gas could be imported on much better prices. 12-14 years back, we faltered then from Iran. There were no sanctions also. We could bring in LNG at a smaller price. Now, when we are trying to import these things, all those countries know that we are in a crisis. We would purchase it on any cost, and we have opened it up. So the strategy of negotiations at this moment, our strategy is failing because we can't get a good price. The price of LNG and others, they have been increased. All other countries and nations, they went on the business manner and they increased the prices. So the oil, in the case of gas also, LNG, they're talking of prices of 80% equivalent of oil. So it will be higher. We have faltered on the coal production in the past. That is a failure, big failure, because if you look at the world, India is more than 60% on coal.
Even US is more than 30 or 30%?
US is about 40%. Yeah, more than 40% on coal. China is more than 60% on coal, and their production is huge. And still they have coal. Of course, that creates some problem for the environments. Some mitigable, some not. But we faltered. We have less than 1% on coal, and that was possible here. And India is, out of that big percentage on coal, half of it is imported coal, not only local coal. So, and we have faltered major problem on hydro. We couldn't build Calabar Dam while it was mature, and that was the best natural site for that. If we had built it in time, then we could have probably built the other hydro also out of the economy development which would have come out of that. Because let me say it here that if Mangla and Tarbela were not built, we would have been totally food deficient now. The food production has gone with Mangla and Tarbela storages, which are hardly 12 to 13% of the total annual water flows. We have increased the food development, we increased our crops of wheat, rice, sugar, cotton more than 30 times. And our population increased by more than 10 times in last 5-6 years. So we are not only food sufficient, but we are also surplus and we can export. Similarly, because that has come out of the storage plus cheap water hydropower.
How do you figure in, in this scenario when there is a mess that can be cleaned and we can do, do you think that we should import electricity? Especially in these, we'll discuss this later in the program, but what are the scenario of importing electricity? Let me just, for the benefit of the viewers, know them.
Importing always electricity is different from other commodities. The other commodities can be transported. Electricity can be transported only in the way of transmission, real time, and a real electric line connection. It can't be in the shapes or trains and so on.
Yeah, right.
And for that purpose, when we are building the lines, then we have to have it close by. You can't import from a country which is far behind, our neighboring country. So we have to look at their conditions. Presently, India itself is electricity deficient, although they have grown their production much faster in the last 30-40 years than their previous years. In the previous years, first 20-30 years, Pakistan was having faster development, at least with reference to the basic one. But now but still they're deficient. They're having load shedding, and the cost they would ask from us would be very high. And then electricity is something that we have to build huge transmission line and network, and there is a huge capacity payment or fixed charges involved. And electricity, as far as importing power from the other west, like Afghanistan is still deficient, they would have little more power in the future if their power houses are developed as per plan with foreign aids, but then it can be brought from Turkmenistan or Tajikistan.
They are building it on coal, or what fuel they are, or hydro?
No, they are building some on gas and some on hydro.
On Kabul?
In Afghanistan.
On Kabul River?
No, Kabul River is hydro, but then there are also gas, big stations on gas, and some on coal, which they are doing. But that's not such a big number, because their own consumption has gone down because of being war stricken. It has around 2000 megawatts 30 years back, but now they're consuming less than 1000 megawatt. So that is with reference to that. If they develop faster somehow, then they will consume that electricity by themselves. But we can bring through Afghanistan electricity which can be surplus in Turkmenistan based on gas, and Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, which is hydro, and which is more than consumption. But that is available only for 5 or 6 months. It's not available around the
hydro component.
Hydro component, which is seasonal. Water is available, like our countries, more in the summers when the glaciers melt or rains are more, and this winter time their needs go higher and their electricity generation goes down. Their needs go higher.
But we need electricity in summer.
We need more in the summer and lesser in the winter.
So it somehow suits us.
So that suits us, no doubt. But then we have to see that we have to build the transmission lines, and it's a costly affair, and then there are risks involved, strategic issues which have to be mitigated through a very strong legal, political framework, which would depend on the situation.
By building trust, which is not there.
Of course, trust has to be improved.
Which is dwindling by the day. Here we take a break, and after the break we would analyze all these things you have just heard, and please stay with us.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Welcome back. So, what are the risks in importing electricity, first of all?
As I said, number one is not availability around the year.
Right.
But if we combine the imports from Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, the hydro, with import from Turkmenistan, their power generation is based on gas, which is available all around the year. Then a system can be made. So first, one risk can be covered, that we can get that electricity. Number two, the cost of transporting and transmitting the electricity, the lines. We have to see how much it is.
How much cost is this?
At present, the latest cost worked out is around 2 cents for the transmission alone. But then
2 cents per kilowatt
2 cents per kilowatt only with transmission. Now in our case,
and that will become part of the tariff.
of course it will be a part of.
How long? For 30 years, 20 years?
For all the 30 years, about 30 years will be there.
With the life of the project.
Yeah, and then 2 cents will always be translated into more and more rupees because our
Depreciation.
economy is not growing, and our economy, we are having about more than around 5% compound devaluation in rupee against dollar or hard currencies. So that will go
Every
on
year.
increasing. Yeah, every year. And number two, that transmission cost will not be based on kilowatt hour, it will be based on the capacity. If we somehow cannot transport that power, if the power is not available, then we have to create some risk. The risk should not be on ours. If there is some sabotage to the line, then there should be a mechanism that we should not suffer. Otherwise, the kilowatt hours will be less, and
Fixed cost would be
fixed
there.
cost would be still there, as it happened in case of IPPs. But when we utilize them 20% or 10%, 15% per year, like Karke, a rental plant, the cost went up to 42 rupees per hour, kilowatt hour. So a full-fledged utilization, availability, constants of the transmission lines, all-time availability, no sabotage or a mechanism otherwise to mitigate that, something which should hedge us from all those risks. All those mechanisms need to be built in, and the political situation, if it is improved.
Do we find today anywhere in the world some sort of tariff, usual trading, general environment or a general regime to look after the trade of commodities like this? Anywhere else in
Of course.
electricity?
Of course, electricity transmission is a phenomena in Europe. Norway is selling a lot of power because they have huge hydro power and it's very cheap. It's selling to neighboring countries.
But there is not a risk like this,
Of course.
strategic
Of course,
risk
not
is
in this
there.
system strategy. South Africa has developed and they are exporting power. South Africa was as bad as we are in 92, or we were better in terms of everything: electricity availability, manpower, efficiency, non-mechanization, non-automation. They have developed because they adopted good policies and they implemented those. Our problem is that we used to have good planning. Our planning commission was doing good, our planning department of power sector were doing good, but implementation was not good. The political follow-up and the political will to implement the things on merit, and the governance which should allow everything to go on merit and in time, and some funds availability. Our project should not be delayed.
Most of the time when we use word governance in very contemporary terms, I'm saying, we are referring to corruption.
Yeah, governance is one thing is against good governance is corruption. The second thing is delay. Delay
Which
can
is
be
corruption.
inefficiency
Which is
also. Number three is lack of funding availability, lack of support of the national institutions. For example, if you look at
That is corruption as well.
it may be because of corruption, it may be because of inefficiency, but it is going against merit. That's there. You cannot always prove the corruption sometime, but it may be behind the scene. You could
You
look
can
at the
sniff
case
it, you
of
can sense it.
why not initiate this case, or a case of Nandipur. Nandipur power station was my brainchild. I proposed that power station.
That is 780 megawatt or something.
It's 425 megawatt. If it is in oil, it would become 490, 500 megawatts if it is run on oil. I proposed that when I was in charge of power system operation, in order to resolve the problems which I was seeing. I could, in my time, the generation went up by about 50% in the 6th year of my control, when I was running the power system operation 24 hours a day. So I said, now we have increased the generation, and now future there were huge industries which were being installed between 2001 to 2007, and the demand was increasing not only in the domestic sector of air conditioners but also for the industry. And I said, now a new power station should be built, but public sector was disallowed to build any thermal power station from 91, 92 till that time. It was kind of banned, and private power houses were inducted and they were encouraged. But they were sometimes they were coming and sometimes they were not coming. They were dictating the power sector to increase their policies, and they were looking at their own priorities. I'm talking of 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6. They had many other, so they were not coming despite their agreements and so on. There were delays. There were not many penalties which were placed on their delays, IPPs, new IPPs. So I said that we should build them, otherwise we would have load shedding. In between 2002 to 2006, we had hardly any, we had nominal load shedding. And we had good rates then. And industries were being installed at that time, which these days they are being stopped. So at that time, what happened? I mean, the power stations were not coming in the public sector nor in the private sector. So I proposed to the chairman, Tariq Hamid Saab, at that time, personally, that you build 3 power stations. One Nandipur, on one Wabda hydro, small hydro. We have land, we have water. It's the load center, Gujranwala.
Where?
Nandipur, Gujranwala.
That was hydro.
Hydro. It was a small hydro there. We had a land.
Hydro mean create a pond or something?
No, hydro was already working there. A small hydro on canal was working.
Canal.
There is a canal on which there's Nandipur, I don't know, remember the name. But that canal coming from Chenab, probably that is, on that canal there is a small power station there, 10 megawatt or something. Chicho Ki Maliya is also a similar station, also, working on a canal.
On a canal.
And in Faisalabad, we had big land and we had another canal going there. There was a high thermal power station there, but we had a big area. Because first of all, there is a problem here, which land to select, how to select, who to do that, and then there are many powers, vested interests who would come on that, and sites. Sites should be selected by the technical people, and these were the best sites because we had 60% of the major load in the center of the country, with generation only 5% there, and we had a problem of transformation also, and I proposed that we should do it. It was accepted. He put it in a meeting to the then president, and it was approved by him because there was an eminent shortage coming otherwise. And Chicho Ki Maliya, Nandipur and Faisalabad was approved to be built. The then Prime Minister, Mr. Shaukat Aziz, removed one of them, the Faisalabad, and he said go for the 2. The tender was placed only in 10 days.
Why he removed that?
I don't know. They said that we have commitments with the foreign donors that we will not build thermal power stations in the public sector. There is a policy to be built in the private sector. So
no, they were thermal power.
These are thermal, and there was a policy from early 90s that public sector would not build thermal stations.
Why?
They would build only hydro. That was the policy of the government.
I mean, even the coal is thermal.
Yeah, coal was thermal also.
Coal is, in a nutshell, we don't understand that coal is thermal.
But that was a policy which was made by the government. That's the policies are above the working of the autonomous bodies, even if it was WAPDA.
So the decision to stop building this sort of a project and remove it, do you think it was incompetency of Mr. Shaukat Aziz or had some vested interest?
No, this was done much before Shaukat Aziz. It was done early 90s. He was following the same policy. But
right.
The main thing is that there was a lack of thinking over these things rightly. There was a lack of openness in discussions with the technical people. You find it even today. The lack of the openness in discussion.
What about coal? The government has been started in Saiwal and in Faisalabad they are going with the big bang. And the railway ministry has approved, more than dozen locomotives to bring coal. Do you think it's viable to bring the coal all the way from Karachi to Faisalabad, produce electricity, and then, and in the population center, where there is no wind catch and all that? One of the expert was saying, I don't know, I'm asking you, that if we pollute air at Girdani, that would go up and become part of the global carbon stock. But at Faisalabad, it would stay there, and it would create a situation where the local resident will come up and bring their spade and everything and stop you from doing that.
Of course, you are right. It is true that if it is coal stations built in Girdani, would be much less harmful.
It will make
for
the whole country dirty.
More or less harmful for the environment. And in Saiwal, if they are built, there would be
in Faisalabad,
more damaging in Faisalabad. But it's the country the government which is doing that planning because of the huge problem of lack of power in this load center. And transmission also needs money. I mean, they don't have finances available. That's the problem. The power
What do you mean by transmission? 500 kV?
500 kV or maybe even higher voltage.
What is that?
We could go to 600 kV DC plus minus, which is more suitable for point to point 800 kilometers line. If it is less than 800, then it becomes more expensive, because the converting station of DC, they are very expensive. But if we go to that sort of level for that voltage, that is a point which should be a topic of the study for the engineers, for experts. And the major problem here is the opinions of the experts is not being proper weightage. The openness of discussion with those people is not, done properly. There are people who are, not affiliated with the power sector. They don't have any education. They have been made experts and to decide all these things.
So, do we have a DC line already, or we don't?
We do not have in Pakistan, but India has, US has. So many countries it is existing now.
And
It's
converting station is
of course.
It's a huge capital intensive.
Of course, the system which is on.
For example, for a 600 megawatt, 600 kV line, what is the cost of converting station? Because that need to be at both end.
Yeah.
First you convert AC into DC, and then at the both end.
Yeah, it's one of the stations, if as far as I remember, it's more than 15 billion rupees only the converting station.
Right.
And the transmission import proposal, which is for CASA to bring power from Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan hydro, also envisages it's through DC 500 or 600 kV with 2 converting stations, maybe 3, including one at Kabul. So that, because Kabul would also draw some power there, 300 megawatts. So that also entails this huge cost. So this all questions basically would come out. These economic analysis, financial analysis, and technical analysis must be done through the best possible feasibility and the best possible consultants and experts, then thought over and then decided.
So you say that coal project should go ahead in Faisalabad instead of Gadani?
I think the transmission problem, the cost, and on the other hand, this railway possibility and feasibility and its costs should be compared. Number one. Number two, the environmental issues should also be studied. If the mitigation of those environmental issues through very good, excellent kind of filters is possible, and the ash of the carbon from coal can be collected, dumped, and maybe transported somewhere, then it could be done. After all, if India is having more than 100,000 megawatts on coal, more than 100,000 megawatts.
But the cities are very bad.
Of course.
The smog that we see on motorway, it comes from India.
Yeah, of course, somebody says our weather change this year also came from the other side of the Thar. But we should also at least be able to develop the Thar coal. I mean, Thar coal is in a desert area. And if developed, it would not create so much of pollution there, because there is little population which can be shifted also. But it will develop the area.
Develop that? Some say that is lignite and it's not good.
No. Always there are solutions to the technical problems. And Chinese company Shenhua was doing it, an integrated project with 5.89 cents per kilowatt hour mining. It solved technical problem and generation.
Open pit mining.
Yeah, it was. I don't remember, but they were doing it. I mean, it was included in that, and they were doing it. That was about 2004-05. Unfortunately, the people in Pakistan at that time who were at the helm of affairs, like power sector, ministry, everywhere, since they are not real economic managers, expert economic managers, and they do not possess that kind of motivation and vision into the future, they said it is expensive. So they said the highest we can pay is 5.3 cents. And today the coal tariff approved by NAPRA upfront is more than 10 cents per kilowatt hour. I mean, and this is based on imported also, and for Thar also it is higher, and they are offering much higher rates of return on equity for various power stations coming under China economic corridors.
Here we take another break, and after the break we'll sum up the discussion and try to find out the solutions and try to peep into the future. What should we do? So please stay with us.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Welcome back. So what do you suggest?
You see, the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What should we?
we have talked about generation and bit of transmission. Let me talk about the distribution also. We have, despite the theft, we have huge technical losses in the distribution lines and transformers. They are of the order of around total more than 2000 megawatts, 2500
We lose.
megawatts in summer goes out for technical losses because the conductors are thinner than required. Then material is not good, they're not designed, we have put more loads. It's without planning we keep on connecting and elongating lines and transformers are overloaded. If we could reduce it by half, we can reduce 1200 megawatts of load. 1250 or 200 megawatts load is just going into heating of those systems and damaging those systems and not being used by anybody. Theft, if it is done by a welder or a furniture maker or a tailor, he is still producing his life. I mean, theft is bad and he should be punished, but still he is
contributing something
to
to the economy.
But technical loss, unwarranted, very high technical loss is totally big loss. So that should be saved. There should be a program of energy loss reduction, as it has happened before and done successfully. There should be, a proper plan. It should be implementation. It should be followed up by the government and disclose everybody.
But
and
the
we could save that.
distribution system, they are huge.
That's why that's a huge system.
And they are inside very thickly populated urban areas.
And in the similar areas, such programs were executed in late 80s and early 90s. I was a part of that. I was director of planning in ISCO, and we did it. We did hundreds of proposals of 11 kV and thousands of low tension, and we saved hundreds of megawatts only in ISCO. And similarly, we gave a guideline, and there were other engineers, good ones, who did it in whole Pakistan. Then they saved maybe 600 to 700 megawatts at that time. Today, it's higher load, we can save 1200 megawatts. And remember, the energy going into the losses. There we are putting the fuel in, and it's going into the losses. That is in addition to that. So we can reduce the load shedding only by this program, and the money is available. World Bank has given money. They have their program. Asian Development has given money. It's not being used properly.
Why?
And there are some people who are, number one, there is no, follow up on this line. It's not on the priority. The priority is that new villages should be electrified, new societies should be built in, and new connections, because those connections carry some pressure and some vested interests who would not let these people work on those things, which is basically consolidation of the existing system. So if we can do it, we can also get that energy which could be supplied to industry. For example, 1 unit to industry, according to Dr. Hafiz Pasha's economical report, would add to the national economy 53 rupees per kilowatt hour. Rupees 53 per kilowatt hour.
50 cents.
Yeah, so you mean if that is the kind of availability it would add. So if we look at how much loss is being done by unserved energy, we should also see how much benefit is being done by this energy which has been produced by some of the departments, despite all hurdles and so on. So all of the departments of the country had to join together.
I remember Raja Parvez Ashraf, Prime Minister, used to say that the most expensive electricity is that which is not there. He used to say that, which is not there, because as you are saying, because if one unit can produce, it's tripled.
Yeah.
Then you can afford higher tariff as well.
That's right. Why not? For the commercial, if you look at the commercial, now let me tell you another important fact here, which is ignored by all policymakers. You are not hear it. How much money has been spent on the smaller generators which have been imported by the consumers?
A lot of. It is sort of a captive power.
I've seen it, a captive power, and shopkeepers.
Is it a captive power? Do you agree?
Yeah, it is captive power, but usually the captive power term in the NAPRA's terminology is that power which can also be sold to some other people. This is not being sold. This is just captive for them. This is their own personal power, which is standby power there. But in that, they produce a unit from diesel sometimes 30 rupees per unit, 35 rupees, 40 rupees per unit when diesel was higher. They have been doing it because it pays them to run their business through that in the commercial concerns mainly. And sometimes some, affluent domestic consumers also do that through diesel. Or sometimes they do it with gas whenever possible. But all these generators, according to my estimates and knowledge, which I have collected, the government and the country has put in around $6+ billion on import of generators. Nobody has looked into that. If those $6+ billion were pooled up and given to power sector on say 15% interest, which no bank pays, 15% interest, and some private public sector entity could have made powerhouses worth 6,000 to 7,000 megawatts out of this.
Do you think,
7,000 megawatts.
do you think these dams should be built now?
Of course, that was the first thing which we faltered.
Should look forward. Now, towards the end, we had been discussing and talking all these things, through media and all. Do you think the reformation has started, or it is still stalemate?
I mean, as you see, the people are general common man here. More than 50% is uneducated, and they don't know what to do, and they just have to. They are busy with just making for their bread, and not bread and butter, only bread. They say it's a country where we call the food as bread, roti, because people don't get it. They don't know the name of the food. They say bread. And you see the malnourishment. So how can all those people reform? Reformation would come, and even the educated people. You see some of the people, in the legislation with fake
saying
degrees
in the public
and so
sector, in terms of policy, it's simply because ultimately policies are made in the public sector. They are the custodian to implement them. Do you think the reformation has started?
I mean, 2 years after they left all Gadani and they reformed it to this thing. Now these 2 years, last 2.5 years were very precious. Time is very precious here. We were in shortage of electricity we had, and we still have. They have at least expedited Nandipur. It's good that they made it up. And they're trying for some small hydros, and they're trying to expedite Basha and Dasu. It is good. But the need is much bigger. And all forces and the departments have to find out a way to finance this. And to me, public-private partnership is the best answer. Power sector, when it was in the hands of WAPDA, they have been issuing bonds, and even afterwards, when it is only hydropower.
WAPDA bonds, yeah.
WAPDA bonds, and they have been paying up to 18-19% interest, compound interest, and they have been paying 18% interest to the government of Pakistan for all loans. The money is given by the government from 59 to 85 only, with all loans, and still they have been increasing the energy and increasing the electricity generation, transmission and distribution. Demand was higher. Maybe they could do it 80%, 90%. They needed to do it much faster, but they can have the bonds. Why not? The money should be made to flow in the most important sector, if it is considered to be the most important sector. And all people who have the power, they should see that it is done. Now, the answer of your question is that you should think how much of that is being done. How much of that money is being flown to the Neelam Jailer project, which is a vital project, for which consumers have paid 57 billion rupees in their bills already.
I've seen that project
As a cost.
I haven't seen it. And as I told you, off camera, that the Chinese contractor was working, and he was not paid for the last 3-4 months. And he was just working under the pressure of his government.
See, if it was commissioned, say, 2 years back, along with the line, everything, 2 years generation of that would have paid us
about 1,000 megawatt, 900 something.
1,000 megawatts means around
2-3 rupees.
5,000 million kilowatt hours of units, which is today's marginal cost would be something like more than 50 billion rupees, and 5,000 million units multiplied by 53 rupees if it is industry. How much would it make?
56 rupees. That's 53.
Or 53 rupees, I said. 53 rupees multiplied by 5 billion. See, look how much economy development it would have come. 5 billion into 50. That means 250 billion. 250 billion rupees economy growth would have come out of it every year. So we have lost that 500 billion rupees from the economy. That economy have done.
Or about 500 billion, or about $5 billion.
So you look at that trickle down effect. Of course, it is there. I mean, it is little or bigger or smaller, but trickle down effect would be there. Then there would have been more jobs, more industries working, less stoppage, and therefore less terrorism ultimately, less frustration, and better peace of order. People, more business, more
Thank you
taxes.
very much. We can talk on and on, but obviously time constraint is also very important. So with this we come to the end of the program. Next time, next guest, next topic. So please keep watching our program.